Hi everyone, this is Michael Skye and I'm with Michael Richards here in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And we're going to talk today about a small segment of his life that kind of combines concepts I'm really fascinated about right now, including regeneration in times of transition and gift economies and entrepreneurship with honor and the coalescence of gift economies with grassroots entrepreneurship, grassroots politics. There's kind of so many intertwining concepts here that you're modeling with this place that we're standing in.
Right.
Called, what's the name of this
Well,
building
historically, this is the Matic building, and it was built by families that came here as entrepreneurial immigrants about 120 years ago from the Czechoslovak area of Eastern Europe. And it's interesting that we're standing in a big open double door because that's really expresses what this place is about. It's just an open space that for 12 years it's been open to anyone who has something of value to say. You know, we refer to it as this free speech zone. Every political persuasion is welcome here as long as it's within a civil attitude. We've had everybody from Dennis Kucinich to Ron Paul supporters doing events in here. Right now, Veterans for Peace is a very active organization. Guys are coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq with realizing that they basically were not told the truth. And it's opened their eyes about war and how our entire economy works, and they are in this room talking about alternatives.
Let's go back to kind of the beginning of
Sure.
the story here and the beginning of the history of this
Right.
place, which has to do with the starting of your business, your wax business,
Right.
which interestingly enough was not about making money per se or something, about maybe some of the normal reasons people start businesses. It was more of a social.
Well, it literally started on the streets of New York City. Originally, we're in Iowa now because the business changed and shifted, and we have customers all over the nation and actually all over the world. But it was to provide employment for people on the street. And our initial product was doing simple...
People on the street, meaning?
Homeless men,
people.
women, children. New York City is a large city, and there are people who find that they are pushed off of the economic system through unemployment or eviction or whatever. And so we provided a way for individuals to earn their own way back into economic self-sufficiency. That's how this business started.
And it started off as a wax business?
We were rolling beeswax candles. We were actually making finished candles. And we had customers such as a nationwide chain called the Body Shop Stores. There were another interesting, innovative group of retailers called Urban Outfitters. Those were our original customers.
So how did you come into that, doing wax products?
We were just brainstorming the simplest possible product that we could have people come off the street and make a product to sell without any equipment or capital. We started with $200.
Wow, and when you say we, who are you talking about?
Myself, my wife, our sons, and the people on the street. That was our business. And an interesting circumstance in New York City, we lived on the Lower East Side, and this was in the late 80s, early 1990s, and New York had gone through a real estate bubble. Very similar to what the 2008 bubble that totally crashed, but this was a smaller bubble. And New York real estate had been bid up so high that our landlord had bought this property on kind of an upward cycle of real estate. And they got to the point where they literally, the cost of this building was too high. They walked away from it in New York City. So myself and a playwright and an actor and one visual artist, we decided this was just going to declare it free space. So we took over the building because in New York the legal structure is so complicated that it was going to be in foreclosure for 3 or 4 years. So everyone was happy that we were just maintaining it. I walked down the block to the Edison electrical offices, and we just put all the utilities in our name. And we literally had free space in New York City for 3 years.
Wow.
So that became kind of a creative hub then, because no one had to fight the normal economic struggles of living in New York City. So one of the residents became an absolutely phenomenal award-winning playwright during those years. His brother was in the original Broadway cast of the noted Broadway production Rent, and he then was in the original cast of the movie Rent. And I think a lot of it was just that we all had this free creative space, where these guys and our business started in that place too, because we had time to create without financial pressure.
Uh-huh. Was this a building that you also lived in?
We lived there. We all lived there.
You lived there, and it was also your workplace and your creative
Well, what
space?
happened was there were 8 apartments in a Lower East Side walk-up, one of those 5-story buildings in New York with no elevators. You carry your groceries 5 stories up. And when all the lights and the water went out, most of the tenants moved out. And I was the instigator. I knocked on the remaining tenants' doors, the Rapp brothers, the playwright and actor that I was mentioning. So, hey guys, all we need is lights and water to keep our apartments. So I got the lights and water on. So half of the building was empty. So we all kept our existing apartment as living space, and we occupied the rest of the building for our workspaces.
Huh.
So the candle business, where we were employing homeless people on the streets in New York, we had free rent.
Huh.
We paid our utilities because the landlord, having walked away and abandoned their mortgage, was just too high. They were what we refer to now as underwater. They had bought at the top end of the cycle. They just one day decided they weren't going to keep paying the high payments and kind of cut their losses and walked away, and we were left there with an empty space for 3 years.
Sounds like a coalescence of the spirit of the Occupy movement, along with social activism and
That's
social
exactly
entrepreneurship.
What it was. Exactly what it was.
So Michael, now you have a space here in Iowa, which is serving pretty much the same purpose. But
Yeah.
tell us about the transition from it was beeswax at first,
Right.
was it not?
Well, beeswax is the primary material used in the candle industry is petroleum wax. And our customer, the chain of body shop stores, the Urban Outfitters, they were more innovative retailers, and they wanted a natural product. So they said, is there any natural wax? Well, we were using beeswax. And that cost 9 times the price of the traditional wax, which is petroleum wax. So as an entrepreneur, I saw this economic need to deal with. And that was the huge gap between the price of petroleum wax and the price of beeswax. Having grown up in Iowa, I was familiar with the properties of soybean oil. Our family, we were the first generation that were not farmers, but I worked on farms. I knew the properties of soybean oil. So right there in New York City, I started researching and developing an alternate wax that could be as low cost as petroleum wax, but have the properties of a natural wax like beeswax, and I invented soybean wax.
Huh? You invented soybean wax.
I did. Right.
So, and which now is it's growing in popularity, right? As an alternative to petroleum-based wax.
The industry research shows about 80 million pounds of soy wax is being used each year. Our original product has 20 million pounds of that market. So we're still maintaining 25% control of the global market in soybean wax as the originator. And sometimes people ask me, well, aren't you concerned about competition? If there's not competition, it means you didn't have a viable product.
So Michael, now you're doing quite well these days off of your.
We're doing well enough. I describe it as our wax. We have a patent royalty, and which is really interesting because it provides me a steady, secure source of income that is a residual. It's a patent royalty. So that allows me to do the creative things I've always done in my life But for the first time, I have a bit of a budget to work with. I'm used to doing
And as you were talking about the other day on our other interview, you're using a lot of that income to fund the development of your self-sustainable community
right.
over near your house, which is just a few blocks from here.
Yeah.
So let's go back, though. So you've got that extra income now thanks to what's happened with the soy wax industry.
Right.
But let's go back to the point when you purchased this building. And actually, so you developed the wax, and then there was some gifting that happened there,
right.
In the story, and I'd like to capture that.
Well, the whole business started as a kind of a mutual gift. We were employing people off the street, which they considered that as a gift of opportunity. And this is an important distinction. We weren't giving them a gift of food or shelter. They earned that themselves. But everyone needs the dignity to be self-sufficient. So that was our gift to them, as an opportunity for them to come back off the street, to earn their own living, and that's a huge gift. To me, that's a bigger gift than feeding people, then their gift to us was just incredibly high-quality work. So to me, that was a model of how economic exchange works. It's a cycle of mutual gifts. Neither party was really looking to, our goal of setting up that business was to employ people on the street.
Not because you could pay them less, but because
no, we paid them more.
Okay, so
we always paid about double minimum wage from day one. So we were never looking to, for instance, there are no need to criticize places like Goodwill Industries or places like that, but a lot of places that employ marginal people pay them, they actually get legislation in place to be able to legally pay them less.
Huh.
So
through your entrepreneurial efforts, you were working out a way, how can we create a way to actually pay them more?
The only way that they could be self-sufficient was to have a decent living wage.
Interesting.
Right.
And
so we
part of
paid
that
more
pressure, you out came soy wax.
Right. By the time we were using beeswax, we'd have 12 to 24 people who had become dependent on that income of making the beeswax candles. One of our major customers hired a corporate executive from a major multinational company, and he came in and he said, every cost here has to be slashed. It's the corporate model of cost slashing, outsourcing, downsizing, and throwing the people out the door. So, we had to be creative and entrepreneurial. They were going to slash all their costs. So one of the things they wanted to slash was these expensive beeswax candles. So we had to create a low-cost alternative. So we ended up inventing a wax that was as low cost as petroleum wax, and that's soybean wax.